What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS live stream for this week's Masters. We finally made it to the holy grail of all golf tournaments, our Super Bowl over here, and really super excited. Probably not going to sleep much tonight. Probably has to do with the few coffees that we'd have today. I think we're on like cup number 3 now, but probably more so to do with how excited I am for tomorrow. We've got headlines galore, whether you're talking about somebody like Rory trying to get the Grand Slam, the GOAT's teeing it up, Spieth looks like he's in form, might be able to win this. That one's a little bit more centered around me, but still, we have the Live versus PGA thing going on. Any of those guys get into contention, it's going to be a huge headline. Really just looking forward to see how it all pans out. So excited for this. I can see a ton of you already down there in chat. First off, welcome on in, and let's get ready to crush this week. Whether it's for our bets, outright bets, just get ready to sit back, relax, watch this thing. Whatever the case may be, this is your time. Feel free to ask any questions that you have, and we'll get all those answered for you. I got Sandy Lau's winning style down there. I love the just rhyming there you got going on. You said, do you like Fred Couples or Sandy Lau for first round leader? I'll probably have to pass on that. I can tell that you're a big Sandy Lau fan, but hey, probably not going to be first round leader, but love to see him out there, right? Pieces of golf history. If M. Locke says the Gordon Sargent fan club, yeah, that kid's going to be a stud. We'll talk about him quite a little bit later on. I'm definitely up there in the fan club with you. What's going on, Marco Boras? Guys, join the community contest. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, link is down below, boys. If you want to get a spot in there, make sure you reserve your spot to have your lineup reviewed on Monday. Join the community contest. Link is in the description down below, boys. What's going on? James says, hey, Luke, old man James is here. Thanks for the great props last week. Yeah, let's run it back this week. Let's make some money. What's going on? Gordon Loam, I agree with that. Luke is the GOAT. No, you're the GOAT, Nick. What's going on there? We have Constant Mijanovic. Hopefully I got close on the name there. He said, listen and listen close. Tom Kim top 5. That would be a spicy first timer out there, right? We don't see him go out there all the time and have success, but Minwoo Lee finished T14 last year. If Minwoo can finish T14, Tom Kim can certainly finish top 5. So you're getting some good odds on that too. So I like your thinking there for sure. Not going out there taking some chalk guy to finish top 5, right? You're getting a little bit more creative about it, and I think he still has that top end upside. Sean says, what's up, Luke? What's going on, Sean? Got Mark down there. Got the new account. Okay. Steelers Pogo. Dude, it's golf season. Hey, it's always Steelers season when you're part of little Steeler country over here. What's going on, Alex? Our boy Dinger Betts over there. Patrick Reed is doing his DX suck it symbol. Oh boy. I at least want a live guy to get into contention, but if it's Patrick Reed, all of the golf media is just going to be buzzing over it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. You got Rom and JT. Let's ride. Yeah, I like both of those. I'm not on Rom outright, but that's a great outright bet, especially if you got 11-1. Bryson is so low owned. Yeah, he is. He's essentially unowned. So yeah, we'll talk about him later on. If you're crazy, you want to take chances, he's your guy. But like you said, I don't know if I can get there myself. What's going on, Jeff? Any news or green/red flags about Willie Z? I know he changed up his putting grip, but health-wise, nothing I've heard. So that's actually a good sign, right? If you haven't heard anything, things are probably going well. Do you think playing 7 6K guys is crazy? So you're saying in your set of lineups, right? So 7 6K guys, I don't think that's crazy. I think the 15% ownership might be. So I'm assuming you're playing quite a few lineups. Let's say you're playing 20, maybe you're playing 150 lineups, right? I usually take like 7%, maybe to 8-9% at the very most of somebody in the 6K range. Now, this week, there are a few guys that are going to be 4 or 5% owned. So maybe you do take, right, 9-10% in your player pool, but 15%, it's aggressive. So if that's your intention, that's fine. But typically, at least just going based on my personal experience, I'm not nearly as heavy as on some of the guys down low. I spread it out a little bit more. I play 150 lineups though, right? So it's a little bit more conducive to doing that as opposed to playing like 5 to 20. Hollis says, was he able to get tickets yesterday? Oh my gosh, I am so jealous. That's a bucket list thing for me. Have fun out there, man. I'm sure it'll be a blast. Jason says Steelers. James Conner was at Pitt when you were. He was. Boyd was. We had Pickett there, obviously, towards the end of when I was at school. Yeah, a lot of great players. And I got to meet a lot of them because I played club football and we played on the same field. So a lot of them would come over. Especially James Conner. He came over all the time, just kind of shooting the shit with us, especially because he was injured for the entire season. So he didn't really have much to do. Cool thing to go there and play club football, which is kind of more recreational more than anything. But to be able to hang out with those guys on the side was pretty cool, especially like party time, that kind of thing. We had a lot of joint parties between the club and actual football teams, which was pretty sweet. Tom Kim was pure during practice round. Doesn't surprise me. He looked pretty good during the par 3 contest. I saw that. W Steelers, you know it. Would Bryson finish top 10, or do you think he'll D-sham-blow it? Yeah, I think he'll D-sham-blow it, as you put it there. Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see him finishing top 10. Let's get it, Luke. Let's get it, Robert. He said second best team in PA. Hey, I can't argue with last year's results, right? I mean, second best team in the NFL. So definitely can't contend that. Mark says conditions should suit the likes of Tommy Ladd and Fleetwood. I agree. I like good old Tommy Ladd Fleetwood out there. I love the mullet he's got going too. First time playing tier style DFS. Yeah, I don't really ever play that. Pick one. Out of Moronk, Svensson, Straka, or Poston. Oh boy. Or take a swing with Sargent. Ugh. I hate tiers. I have to say that. If I had to choose one of those first four, it'd be Straka. I think that he's shown up in, not I think, but he has shown up in stronger fields before. And some of the other guys down low, they're more known for popping in weak field events. Whereas Straka, right, has done so FedEx St. Jude, right, playoff level event. So I'd go that direction just because I think he can actually pop in this level of field. He's not going to win, right, but maybe he pops for a top 5. Nick says, who doesn't want Reed and Rory paired up at some point? Yeah, it would be must-see TV. Honestly, Patrick Reed with any of the outspoken PGA Tour players. Is Louis Oosthuizen injury still a concern? It is. It is a concern for me. I'm not playing him this week. Over on Live, I played him for a few props this weekend. I got to see him in person, and he was wearing a wrap the entire time on the afflicted elbow. So I'm imagining that it's not 100%. What's your main guilty splurge if you win the Millie? Whew. Definitely a trip to Vegas, 100 million %. I'm gonna go to Vegas anyways, but if we win the Millie, we're gonna splurge on that a little bit more than we would before. Maybe we go and get a suite at the Venetian, something like that, rather than taking our free suite at the Cosmo, which is nice. It's got an actual balcony on the Strip, but the suite sounds a little nicer, right? Maybe have a penthouse suite. Jason says, I had Connor as a student in high school, very respectful. Yeah, good overall dude. Like, he'd come over, he wouldn't just be, shooting the shit with us, having fun, but he'd try to help us out, right? Because obviously much lower skilled. Our instruction was shoddy at best. We didn't have the best coaching. It was almost non-existent. So yeah, having guys like him, Boyd, he was only there for 1 year when I was there. Boyd was extremely helpful. Do you think Kurt Kitayama could get into the top 10? I do think he could. I think the odds worth attacking on a few markets, blind shop that obviously. But yeah, it's still a long shot, right? There's a reason why he's 7-8 to 1. Actually, I think he's like 10 to 1 to do so. You're putting at least 1K in this tournament. Yeah, I have more than that. But Dustin Johnson will either be hit or miss. Yes, he's either going to go out there, get himself into contention like he typically does at this golf course, or he's going to fall flat on his face. I mean, the live stuff has been good. He's been one of the most consistent players over there. Yeah, I like him this week, right? But I know it's risky. He's inherently risky. Any live player has that inherent risk. Fred Couples winning it all. I love it. Super bold. Fred Couples, maybe you take him on Prize Picks, though. I know, obviously, you're looking at that, Dinger. That strokes prop might be taken under on that. Robbie says, same tier style. Okay, I would take Gooch. I like Gooch there. Of course, I got you guys. All right, let's start talking about this golf course. We'll get into questions here in a little bit. I know, obviously, a ton of us down here in chat because it's the Masters. We'll get back to you in a minute, but we have some stuff to talk about when it comes to weather and how this golf course is going to play this time around. Because, a few of my videos, I've mentioned the bad weather situation. You've probably heard it 10 times to this point. I've avoided giving you guys my take on it because it's dependent on the forecast, right? This is an ever-changing situation, and it really depends on the timing, even more so than what's actually coming through, because we're trying to find an edge over the first 2 days. And unlike most PGA Tour events, there's no waves to be had. All 88 players are going to be going off in twosomes, off of number 1, 2 after 2, right? There's no 2-3 hour break in between the morning and afternoon. So it's continuous tee times. Now, granted, some of the guys going off earlier tomorrow will have some of the later tee times there on Friday, much like a PGA Tour event, but it's not going to be nearly as polarized, not going to be nearly as, separated, right? There's not going to be as much separation as what you would have for a PGA Tour event. So keep that in mind. But weather could play a huge impact. And let's go over here where there's not an ad playing. Let's take a look at the 5-day forecast here. And you can see on Thursday, it's going to be relatively low winds. I'll say there's not that much of a threat in terms of precipitation. When we get this ad off here, I can show you guys. Alrighty, let's see. Let's go to the 10-day. I had the wrong screen up here, but we can get it real quickly. Here we go. Come on. Let's bring up the actual daily forecast. All right, here we go. So over here on Thursday, you can see right around like a 10, maybe 20% chance of precipitation the entire day at the very most, which you might think, oh, there's a chance that it might shower at one point. Yeah, it's going to be next to nothing if something comes through on Thursday. Nothing that's going to stop play or make play more difficult. You're looking at low winds. You can see the wind gusts over here on Wind Finder. Let's bring it up for Thursday. Are a little bit higher in the morning than the afternoon. You can see closer to 15 miles an hour for maybe the first few hours of play. But outside of that, it's absolutely ideal, right? The guys going off late tomorrow are looking to get a little bit of the better side of the spectrum when it comes to weather conditions, which is why I think, if anything, maybe you target the guys going off late tomorrow. There's a couple of reasons for that. So on Thursday, they're going to get the easier end of the spectrum, but even more so, let's get this to go to Friday. Friday is going to be an absolute doozy. They're calling for, especially towards the latter half of the day, upwards of a 50% chance of rain. And they're not showing it here on Weather Underground, but most of the other weather sources are also calling for a relatively high chance of thunder and electricity in the area, which of course would lead to a stoppage in play. So the guys in the morning, you can see they're in relatively low winds. We go over here to Wind Finder. You can see the wind gusts are also pretty much non-existent in the morning. So once again, those guys that have the later tee times are also going to have the earlier tee times on Friday. So maybe you look at that, but you also have to consider that there's only, I believe, 4.5 hours between the first and the last guy on tee time. So if there's going to be an edge, it's not going to be for the entire round. We know that much. And I don't know how much you can play that. Right? Like, you're going to have to look at tee times. Maybe the guys on the extremes are the ones that you consider the most, right? So maybe the guys that are going off really early tomorrow that we know are going to be going off next to last there on Friday, you avoid. Or maybe the guys that are going off in the last few groups here tomorrow that are going to be going off super early there on Friday morning are the players that you want to target. But outside of that, especially for the guys towards the middle, there's going to be next to no impact. So it's very much so individualistic. And I have to add, if there's any sort of thunder delay, right? Let's say that you can see on Weather Underground, they're not calling for thunderstorms. Again, most of the other ones are calling for thunderstorms on Friday afternoon. That advantage could go away, because I'll show you guys Saturday. Saturday does not look fun to play in. Saturday is calling for much higher winds, closer to 12 miles an hour of sustained winds. So over here on Wind Finder, it doesn't show that far ahead, but they're calling for 22 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour of wind gusts. So if they do have to finish their round on Saturday, that would just further, lead to a bigger edge, right? Because they're either going to be playing in rain tomorrow afternoon and have to play through it, or they're going to have to finish up their round on Saturday and deal with that. But again, it's only going to be like 6 holes, right? We're not talking about an entire wave only playing on the one day. It's going to be a much smaller impact than what you see for most slates. That being said, when we're looking at the DFS angle, which let me go ahead and share my projections up here with y'all. There we go. Got them up on the screen. It's not impacting a ton, right? There's a few lineups I have to say where I'm trying to play a little bit of a weather edge. One of them is my main single entry, where I'm trying to target specifically down low for my value plays, guys that are in the last tee times on Thursday, the last 3-4 groups. I have both of my value plays there in the last 3-4 groups. Other than that, especially in my set of 150 lineups, I just think over a 4-round sample size, that cream is going to rise to the top, right? Maybe that 1.5 round advantage that these players are getting can boost them. And kind of like I said, the bottom tier guys are the guys that I'm really using this for. That's how I think you should play this advantage. And again, you got to have tee times up. You got to make sure that you're only really looking at this advantage for the guys that are on the extreme, right? Either really early or really late on the tee times there on Friday, and go in that direction. Let's catch up on chat. That was a lot. Did my little monologue we had to do about this golf course. Let's see what we've got down there. Did you hear that Louis Oosthuizen has moved to a new swing coach? See, this guy's getting even better at trying to get me to say things. He's changing up the profile picture, the profile name, and everything. Hey, good try, though. Abrasive says Poston should be a good fit for Augusta. Yeah, only one trip, so you got to worry about the experience, but solid putter. I don't know much about the creativity, and I have to say, I'm a JT Poston stan. I'm one of the bigger fans out there, and I couldn't tell you if he's a super creative player. I know he's decent around the green. He's not an elite level around the green player, but it's to be determined, I would say. I think that in theory it makes sense, but we'll have to see. There's some surprising fits, right? Like Sergio loves this golf course, yet I don't think I would have expected that. Thoughts on HV3? I think he's got upside in general. So I'll say this: playing a bunch of live guys this week. They're all relatively low owned. They're all much lower owned than they probably should be. And I think a lot of people forget that DJ, before he left for the live tour, was up there with the Patrick Cantlays, usually priced above somebody like a Jordan Spieth regularly, right? In like 20% owned. Now he's $8,800, which, if I gave you a time machine, right, and we just skipped from the start of live until now, and I told you that DJ was $8,800, and I told you that he was going to be like 10% owned, you would tell me that I was crazy, that there's no shot that was the case. But that is the situation that we're in. So I know I'm using DJ as an example, but almost every live player you can say that about. The only one that's really garnering a significant amount of ownership, obviously Cam, DJ, both right around like 10%, would be Brooks Koepka, who at this point I have right around 15% ownership. Which is even low for him considering the form that he has coming in. So like HV3, we don't know that much about his game. Have to add that. The live results have been extremely inconsistent, but that's a risk you're going to have to be willing to take on those live players if you're going to go after that leverage. And last year, I know that most of them were still on the PGA Tour. Actually, I believe all of them, right, were still on the PGA Tour at that point. They were playing a lot more consistently, but 9 of the top 23 were live players, right? And I've heard a few people say that they're just going to play no live guys this year out of principle. It's a moral play, so on and so forth, which I just vehemently disagree with. I don't think it's that deep, right? We're not going to go into a whole spiel about that, but I don't think it's that deep. I don't think you have to be talking about morals and stuff when you're talking about playing live guys or not. But those sort of players are going to be inherently lower owned because of those people. And I can tell you that it's a significant portion of your competition is going to have that stance. And so it'll be an interesting little test to see on ownership where how many people just avoid them because of that situation. Which again, I don't think it's that deep, right? I don't want to talk about supporting them or not. I don't support the live tour, but again, I don't think it's that deep where you have to fade all these guys because you disagree with them, right? Jack says, seen a lot of people tipping up Willett. I have seen that too. I'm not so sold on him. You said for a top 10, finished 12th last year when he was playing awful. Yeah, I understand the play. It's such a strong field. He misses the cut here a lot too. So I know last year he played pretty well, but outside of that, it hasn't gone all that well, right? Missed cut, top 25, missed cut. So he's volatile, and I think that he's going to come in maybe a little bit higher owned than people expect. I had him right around like 7% this morning. I've lowered that a bit. I have him closer to like 6% now when it comes to his ownership, but it wouldn't surprise me in higher dollar contests, like single entries, $50, $100, $200 single entries. That he comes in closer to like 10%, which for me would be a huge fade. Who would you pick between DJ and Poston or Neiman and Koepka? Probably DJ Poston. I like both combinations though, because I do like Neiman this week. The double live combination though is living on an edge. You're definitely going to get a lot of leverage. But the thing is about Poston is he's also going to be super low owned, right? So it's not like you have to force him in. What's going on, Mark? He said, could you give us a good core for single entry? Got our core plays up there, man. So I'd stick to those. Those are my favorite plays. They're going to be relatively high owned, as you can see. Meant to mention this already, but we have ownership over here on the right. So normally everything is behind the paywall, right? But for today, it's the Masters, one of the biggest tournaments of the year. I wanted to give you guys a little bit something extra, right? To help you out with the research. So typically this would be posted anyways on my Patreon page, but it's also over here. So you can see Rory, right? 22.4%. Getting some steam. JT 16.2, Jason Day nearly 19%, Sanjay nearly 20% owned. These sort of players, right? You wouldn't want to take all 4 of these core plays together, or should say maybe 3 of the 4 is more realistic, right? In, let's say, a GPP lineup, but in a single entry, that's the exact kind of build that I'm looking for. So those are your 4 guys, Mark, my core plays. Those would be the best guys to go in that kind of contest. Lastly, before you leave chat, your play of the day is JT over Birdie or better matchup. Okay, yeah, let's take a look at it. I don't know who he's against, so let's take a look at it. I have it up on the other tab. He's playing Patrick Reed. Yeah, I'm all for that. I actually kind of like Patrick Reed this week, but I don't like him more than JT. That's for damn sure. So I like it a whole lot, man. Best of luck out there this week, Dinger, and let's make some money. We have Florida says Ryan Fox's ownership. So yeah, let's scroll down. I'll show you. So ownership, it's like right, 3.8%. Like it's not non-existent. Right? He's slightly higher owned than a Brian Harmon, slightly higher owned than somebody like a Gary Woodland, but still lower owned than Danny Willett. And actually, I guess in my last ownership update, we bumped down Danny Willett, which I have to imagine has to deal with the form where he's still number 25 in the field. So if my algorithm is right and he's actually only like 4% owned, I personally think he's probably going to be closer to like 7-8%. But again, my algorithm does not agree with me. Right? It has him at 4.1%. Then maybe he's a good play because he's got the course history. I guess the form's better than I was giving him credit for. Something to think about. But yeah, 3.8% on Ryan Fox. Curious if you were on any Cam Smith. I'm not. I have too many stands up top that I'm trying to get real aggressive takes on that I can't fit in Cam Smith. If I was spreading out my exposure a little bit more, I'd be able to, but that's not something that I'm doing this week. I'm trying to be a little bit tighter up top. I'm not even going to read it. I'm just going to laugh. You guys are down here with the troll comments. I'm just going to put them up there at screen. Ireland says, a lot of places have Finau 20% plus. Yeah, I did for a bit too, Ireland. So before this morning, I had him about like 20.3, 20.5%. But I haven't heard anybody talking him up, and I haven't heard anybody saying that he's like one of their core plays. So anytime that's the case, somebody's maybe getting a little bit less steam than the industry expects. I think a lot of people that are doing ownership projections maybe don't account for that, right? Because they'll account for the guys getting steam, but they don't necessarily consider the guys that aren't being talked up. And I actually mentioned to Nick down there in chat, I was mentioning it to him over there on Discord. And he's like, yeah, I haven't heard anybody talk him up. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy, right? I wasn't just like watching the wrong pieces of content and happening not to hear people talking up Tony Finau. I guess somebody correct me if I'm wrong down in chat. I'm sure maybe a few people have pointed him out today, but yeah, I like Tony Finau's ownership right now, and I have him much, much lower. Like, was it 15%? Last time I checked on that. Where's he at? 15.3. Yeah, I'll just full disclosure. That got me onto him, right? The fact that I have him at 15% as opposed to 20 is enough for me to play him. So hopefully we're right there. Hopefully the algorithm, right, has a little bit lower ownership than Willett than I think I was expecting. And then in this case, same thing. So hopefully the algorithm's right. And I may be adding Willett to the player pool. That's something I'm going to be thinking about here for a while. JGA says, how long till props? Probably like 25 minutes, 30 minutes. We're going to have quite a bit to talk about here. So I'd say like 7:45, 7:50, something like that. Matthew says, wondering about Cam Young or Willie Z, seem lower owned. Yeah, so Cam Young's lower owned because he doesn't have a ton of experience, though he does have a caddy now that has a ton of experience. So I think that's helpful. And then who you're saying, Willie Z? Yeah, Willie Z lower owned than I think I was expecting, but it's the injury, right? People worried about the injury. The fact that he hasn't played a whole ton. The form isn't stellar like it was for pretty much all of last year. So yeah, lower owned, pieces of leverage you can get to. I suppose I understand the gripes though. Favorite outright not named Spieth? It's a good question. Oh, Brooks Koepka. So at first I told you guys that I wasn't going to bet Brooks, but I did add him as an outright. I kind of had the FOMO of not getting him at like 65-1 before the Orlando event because I was looking at that. And then he went out there, won. Of course, the number went way down. But Brooks Koepka, yeah, I've got a sneaking suspicion about the man winning this week. He's going to be a little chalky in DFS, but I'm eating it because I think, again, got a little weird suspicion about that. Jeff says, bet Taylor Moore to win a few weeks ago after Shank blew it. Thoughts on a top 20 finish for Taylor? Love the top 20 market, right? A win would be asking a lot, but yeah, top 20 for somebody in form. I know the numbers on them are astronomical. I've seen a few people on Twitter talking it up today. So yeah, I'm all for it. 6K range is very intriguing. A few can pop. Yeah, I think Gordon Sargent, he's going to be somebody that we talk about a little bit later on. He might be that guy who at us, I think he's like 61 or even $6,000 this week. Might get it done for us. You like to sprinkle in some Kirk and Henley. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fans of those two, so I feel like I don't land on them that much. But yeah, they're in form, especially Kirk, right? Kirk has been striping it. Tony is finally going to break through and finish top 70. Oh boy, he has 3 top 10s in his last 5 starts, so he's got a pretty decent track record here already. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. Hey, last week at the end of the live show, you gave us Gooch that you thought was way too low. Do you think he could be a top 20? Yes, I do. I like him a whole lot, actually, Kevin. I was kind of hoping not to talk him up because I feel like he's getting a little bit of late steam here. You can see I have him at 6%. But yeah, I like him this week. I have about 15% of my player pool. He's playing well over in Live. And before he left for the Live Tour, he was on fire, right? He was on his ascent. So I think maybe a little bit underrated and certainly way too cheap. The other 2 places have Finau 22%. Yeah, I disagree with them, I suppose. Yeah, like I saw those ownership projections and questioned them myself because I said, who's talking this guy up, right? And, I posed the question before and nobody got back to me yet, right? Like I haven't heard anybody talking him up this week. So I have to say that I think those ownership projections probably a little too high. Matsuyama, is Matsuyama completely healthy? I don't think he is, but I think he's healthy enough to go out there and contend. So I wouldn't let it, that injury concern really talk you off of him. I'm a little bit less bullish on him than most, just from the form standpoint. Hasn't really been playing well. Who's my favorite overall? Rory McIlroy. I think he's going to win this week. Yeah, or Jordan Spieth would be number 2, but Rory's more than likely the right answer there. Thoughts on Hoagie? Excuse me, guys. Throat's a little dry. All right, thoughts on Hoagie. I like him as a value play. I talked him up in one of my videos this week. For me, it's all about the long iron play. I'm expecting with wet conditions, long irons to be even more important this year than most. They're already extremely important at Augusta National. So yeah, I like him. I think that he's getting some ownership. You can see 8.7%, but not too much to keep me off of him. Nick says you got a 66-1 on day. Jesus. You don't like that anymore. You can't tell me that you wouldn't bet him at 66-1 right now. You're crazy, Nick. You're just trolling. Chris says thoughts on Mito. He's injured. From what I understand, I've seen a few injury sources say that he's dealing with a shoulder injury. Last week, didn't show it at Live or in Orlando, right? Went out there, finished in the top 5. So I'm lukewarm on him. I don't hate him. I certainly don't love him this week, though. So we'll leave it there. I don't really have much to say. I think that he might be injured. He might not be. But putting that aside, his form shaky over there at Live. He, I believe, only has like 3-4 starts. Thoughts on Adam Scott? He's got the experience. I actually do like Adam Scott this week. All right, let's go ahead and talk through some strategy. We're going to talk through building a few lineups. Actually, a few guys I want to point out. I talked about Gordon Sargent, right? There's a few guys on top of him I want to talk about, but let's start with Sargent. And, I could have, brought him up during one of those lineups, but I more want to go through what I'm expecting from him. All of the commentary I've heard from players is that this kid is already an insanely good player. Like, not like going to be. You have guys like Max Homa say that he's already like an elite tier player on tour. He's already, more than, the type of player that would play a Masters is pretty much what Max Homa went out there and said. Rory said that he was hitting about 20 yards past him off the tee. Now, I'm expecting his iron play and his putting to be shoddy, right? Like, this guy's probably all off the tee. But at $6,100, like a top 25 might be enough in a large field GPP because that salary savings is enough to perhaps take 2 of these 10K guys, right? Maybe you take a Rahm and a Rory together, right? In that same kind of lineup. Taking a Sargent makes that lineup extremely feasible, and it still lets you spend up for guys in the 7K range, right? It's not like you're taking those 2 and then going like complete studs and duds. Taking a guy the whole way down at $6,100 essentially gives you like one more mid-tier range guy that you wouldn't have had before. So I'll just say I'm taking shots on Gordon Sargent this week. I've heard enough. I'm sure it could all be smoke and mirrors for people out there in those interviews, but I haven't heard them talk about an amateur that way ever. Like I wasn't around, right? I was like in diapers when Tiger Woods was coming onto the PGA Tour, when they would have been having that same type of conversation. From my memories of watching golf, I've never heard players talk about somebody like this. Like Spieth, JT just kind of came out of nowhere, right? Like these players are at a major, right? Like the Masters, and talking about a player like that, it's I don't know, it's very notable to me. So yeah, I think the hype might be real on the kid. I'm taking a shot on it at least. And by a shot, I don't mean I'm taking 15, 20%, right? It's like 5% in my player pool. So don't think I'm going too crazy on the kid. A few other players I want to point out. So in this 7K range, Tiger Woods, you can see I've adjusted his ownership up to 10%. I'm still playing the big cat. I think that he's extremely live to finish in the top 20. I would think a ceiling for Tiger Woods would be like a T10 finish at this sort of event. I don't see him getting into the top 5 or winning. I'll just say that. If he ends up doing it, great, right? But I'm more looking for that top 20 finish, which at $7,300 might be enough this week, especially if he makes a bunch of birdies. So not my favorite play, but we're at a major championship. Sometimes you're going to play guys that you want to play, and he's one of those people. The ownership I kind of wish was lower, right? When I made the video this morning for the sleepers, he was like 6-7%. But even at 10%, it's still something I'm willing to eat. Abraham Answer, I want to point out, 2.7% owned. He's been a little bit inconsistent. He won the Saudi International, so that's something to note. But he's been a little bit inconsistent in between. He's had a few top 10s on Live. He's had a few 30th to 40th place finishes, which are absolutely horrible over there on that circuit. So the form is shoddy, but he shouldn't be 2.7% owned. Before he left for Live, he was like a Terrell Hatton, Shane Lowry sort of player, right? So you could argue that he's like $500 too cheap and probably like 3-4 times lower owned than he probably should be. So I don't know. I'm taking a shot on a lot of these Live players. Let's show you a few others. Like Patrick Reed is getting some steam. So he's the one Live guy that I feel like you aren't getting an ownership discount on, but he, once again, kind of like a Brooks Koepka, is actually playing good golf. So I guess I understand it. Thomas Peters is 2.9% owned. I actually really like him this week. Kevin Na is 3.1% owned. If you've forgotten, Kevin Na destroys this golf course. He has 3 top 14 finishes in a row, including one last year, and then made the cut back there before. And he has other starts here, right? He's been around forever. This guy's been playing the Masters for God knows how long. Like you can't forget about these guys. Like these sort of players, like Charles Schwartzel finished top, T10 last year at this event. Charles Schwartzel's washed up, right? Kevin Na is that same kind of player, actually a little bit younger than Charles Schwartzel, and has I know he doesn't have a win here like Charles, but still respectable stuff. So like it's these sort of guys that I think are going to win you a GPP. And I'm not saying it's going to be Kevin Na, but it's someone like that, right? Maybe it's HV3. I know Nick asked me about him before, right? Maybe HV3 is that player. Maybe it's Kazuki Higa, who's one of the more accomplished international players. Maybe it's Sam Bennett. If you want to talk crazy, right? There's not nearly as much hype behind Sam Bennett, but Sam Bennett went out there and won the U.S. Amateur. Absolute stud. I forget where he goes to school. I don't know. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but either way, complete stud. Another guy that you could play at super low ownership down low and get a bunch of salary savings. What we're going to do now is talk through some of the strategy in building lineups, right? We could talk players all day. I'm sure we'll do so in a lot of these questions, but what I want to more so focus on is what you should be thinking about when building your lineups, because depending on what sort of contest you're going after, large field GPP, maybe it's a single entry, right? Where you're only going against 500 people, maybe it's like 1,000 other entries on a week like this, or it's a cash entry, right? All 3 of those scenarios have distinctly different, at least game theory aspects you should be considering. So let me go ahead and make the screen bigger. We're going to go through a few questions, and then we're going to build a few lineups together to give you an idea of a few of the things that I'm thinking about when I'm building these lineups. And then afterwards, we're going to get into props for anybody that's waiting on that end. And see, let's find out where we left off. I think it's a question about DJ. Looking at the weather, looks like it'll be a November Masters. Yeah, I thought about that too, Jack. The main difference from my understanding is that a lot of the like overhanging limbs that you have at Augusta aren't there during the fall. The greens are more receptive in the fall overall. The fairways, maybe run out more from my understanding for the November Masters. So that's why it played so easy. I don't think it's going to play super easy this time around. I think the winds over the weekend are going to throw a wrench into things. It's going to be super cold on Saturday. I think it might play a little bit more difficult. That being said, I do like DJ this week. It's not because of the weather conditions. It's not because I think they're easy. It's more so because he has experience here and he's played major championships before in shitty weather. He's used to it, right? This guy's been around forever. So I like him this week. Anytime you get DJ past champion at the Masters, he's live to go out there, win again. Still like Sargent at 8% owned. Mayo talked about him. DFS Army was high on him. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be 8% owned. I have 1%. So at 8% owned, no, I would not like him, but he's not going to be 8% owned. I can guarantee you that. That's baloney. He's not going to be that high. Nick says, thoughts on Hovland? I hate him. He's one of my fades this week. I think the around the green play is a real issue. And if you're talking about high winds, guys missing a bunch of greens regulation around here, that is an absolute nightmare scenario. So I think he's one of the worst plays on the slate. Romby says, thoughts on Minwoo Lee? I like him. He finished T14 last year. So clearly must like the golf course. It was his first ever trip, and he nearly finished top 10. And yeah, coming in on a heater, so I like it. All live lineup just for fun. Hey, as long as it's just for fun. Yeah. I don't know how profitable that's going to be, honestly. Nick says, Benin goes to A&M. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I knew it. I was going to say Oklahoma, which was incorrect, obviously. So I'm glad I didn't say anything. But good to know, Texas A&M. I thought Adberg. Well, no, Adberg goes to A&M, but I guess Bennett goes there too. Interesting. One more. Keegan Bradley, maybe a top 30. Yeah, I like Keegan this week. He's coming in with decent form, especially at the ball striking. I have to say the putting on this course has been atrocious over the years, but he's been better over the last year or so. So maybe he figures it out. So top 30, I think is a decent market to target him though, because that ball striking floor in an 88-person field suits you really well for that sort of bet. Ireland says, do you think a 25-man player pool is good for 40 entries? It sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right. I was thinking of some constructive criticism to give you, but I think you're spot on there. Similar cold, wet, windy in last year's Wells Fargo. And first was Max Homa, second Fitzpatrick and Bradley, fourth Young, and fifth Rory. Shh. I'm playing all those guys except for one. There's one guy on that list that I don't have in my player pool right now. And yeah, I was looking at that too because it's another – it's a good comp too, like from the green perspective. So, hey, Let's keep a little hush-hush about that because I don't want those guys getting steamed up too much. But yeah, I love them all, Mark. I'm in complete agreement with you there. And I may honestly add the fifth one there that I didn't have to my player pool just because you mentioned that. Any love for Thagala? Yes. And I know it's his first time playing here, which is an issue, but Minwoo Lee finished T14 last year. It was kind of an inspiration for still playing Sahith Thagala. He's extremely creative. Like we've seen highlight reel after highlight reel of him chipping in, him putting 90-degree putts in. I remember that happening at Riviera this year. Also last year, he had a few highlights like that. That's a golden age design that plays similar to Augusta. And yeah, I think there's crossover. So yeah, love Thagala. I think the ownership's super low too. Let me check on that. It was low early in the week. I know that 4.8%. Yeah, sign me up. That's egregious. He should not be 4.8% owned. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like 6% owned because people see that and are just like, what the heck? I have to play him now. But yeah, love the play. Let's talk through a few lineups. So if we're building in cash, we can build pretty much without looking at ownership. So if you want to take the Jason Days of the world, who's going to be relatively high owned, if you want to take Sanjay in this lineup, you want to go out there, let's put Scotty in there, right? We can afford him in this sort of lineup. In the 7K range, no doubt, right? In cash, Corey Connors in this sort of lineup. And then you round it off with your two favorite players, the average out at 72.5. I mean, this sort of lineup almost builds itself. Like Scotty Scheffler in cash, almost a shoe-in. This guy killed the golf course last year, is coming in clearly with the best form in the world, not even close. Sanjay, right, was like 20% owned, 25% owned GPPs for good reason, right? I love Jason Day. He's like 20% owned to GPPs. You don't have to worry about that ownership, right? Like you can just take the guys that you think are going to have the best weeks or project the best. And the best part is about ownership is it's actually advantageous to have in a cash sort of contest. Unlike a contest, right, where you want to finish as number one, when you're going against, just trying to finish in 50%, the top 50% of the field, it's actually a good thing to have high ownership percentage. So I would start with those four. As per usual, guys, I can't give you guys all 6 plays, or else Draftkings does not get very happy about that. They try to ban your YouTube, that sort of thing. So we'll leave it with those 4. Those would be like my 4 cash locks this week. In terms of looking at, let's go with the single entry next, because I think it's slowly progressing up to the GPP build where you really have to try and differentiate yourself. A single entry lineup, though, you maybe don't have to think about it nearly as much. You can be a little bit more chalky about it. I know Mark asked before about, who would be my core plays in cash. Well, Jason Day and, I guess I'll go ahead and pick on Sun GM here, right? Like those guys fit that sort of description. I have to say, I don't normally play a lot of chalk and cash. I really try to differentiate myself because, I'm willing to take on that risk. But if you really are in love with a Jason Day, a Sun GM, by all means, right, go ahead and play them. You can do so in a single entry, 2 to 3 max sort of contest. What we're going to do here for my build, though, is we're going to start with Rory instead, right? We're going to slightly differentiate up top, actually to a higher owned player. So now we're dealing with the highest owned guy up there in the 10K range. So we're really going to have to consider ownership, even for the single entry now, right? Because we're taking somebody that's like 25, 27% owned. Moving on to the next player, let's see. Let's take Max Homa. So, Mark, I know you mentioned that just a few seconds ago there, but yeah, Max Homa, I like him, especially if you're going to take like a chalky Rory McIlroy up top. As a third man in, let's put Will Zalatoris in this lineup. I'm also a relatively low-owned player. By starting with these 3 in a single entry, if I want to take chalk in the 7K range now, I can, right? So if I wanted to take a Brooks Koepka, I wanted to go down here. Let's see. I guess in a single entry, I wouldn't mind taking Tiger. You can put him in this sort of lineup. This start to the build, right? Obviously, you'd have to figure out your last player here because, like I said, I can't give you guys all 6 players. This sort of build, I'd be more than okay with in single entry, even though your lowest owned guy here is Tiger at 10%, right? Like even if your last guy was like 20% owned, I would enter this in a single entry. I'd be okay with it because you're only playing against 500 to 1,000 other people. It's extremely unlikely you're going to duplicate yourself with anybody, and getting leverage to the field matters, right? But these guys are still going to be like at most 20% owned with Brooks, maybe in single entries, 15% on a Homa Zalatoris, and you can get enough leverage, right? Only going against 1,000 other entries is, I guess, the point that I'm trying to make. Whereas in a large field GPP, you have to be thinking a lot differently, especially if you're playing in the contest that I am this week, where I'm playing against 195,000 other entries. And in that sort of build, if we want to start with a Rory, I guess we'll use him as a good example here. We're going to really have to think about ownership. So for our next man in, I would love to take a Tony Finau. Can't really do so when his ownership is going to be 15, maybe 20%, like a few other sites are calling for, right? So maybe you don't take him, right, in a GPP sort of lineup when you already have Rory in your lineup. So in this 8K range, you probably want to avoid Jason Day, right? A Sun GM for sure you'd want to avoid. Maybe this is where you take a Shane Lowry, who I think is going to be right around 10% owned at the very most. Up here in the 8K range, because we're going to have to spend a little bit more salary, maybe you take Dustin, right? Who's going to be like 10% owned, the lowest owned player on that range of the board there. So the idea is in GPP lineups, right? You not only want to make sure that you're differentiating yourself so you don't duplicate yourself, but also to get leverage. In a single entry, you can get away with having maybe one guy who's like sub 10%. GPP, you probably want to have at least 2 guys that are sub like 12% owned, at least. And of course, it depends on how much chalk you're taking. You might even need 3 of them, right? If you're taking 3 guys, they're going to be 20, 25% owned. So it's a little bit of a different beast out there. But if you started with these 3 guys, I wouldn't be that worried about my last few spots. I mean, if you wanted to go to a hand here, he's getting a little bit of ownership. That's okay. You wanted to take a Brooks in this lineup, you could even do so too. Especially by taking a Lowry, right? A DJ, you're at least giving yourself some type of edge to the field to exploit, right? If DJ goes out there, finishes top 5, this lineup is going to skyrocket compared to a lot of other lineups, let alone if DJ were to go out there and end up winning. Let's go ahead, catch up on chat on DFS, and then afterwards, we're going to talk about props. So if you have any DFS questions, go ahead, pop them down there in chat right now. Let's see where we're at. Ireland says, did you see Pat Mayo's point on years with wet weather, driving distance didn't have nearly as much correlation? I did not see that. I usually have a hard time watching content here on Wednesdays. I know he does a good job in the morning, right? Has a lot of people tuning in. Every once in a while, people tell me some of the guys that he steams up just so I have an idea of where some of the ownership might be moving. But that's an interesting little nugget. So I'm assuming that's because guys had to lay up on the par fives. I would say on Saturday, it's looking like that might happen. But with how the distance has changed over the years, that's the year that Zach Johnson won, that I'm assuming that he's referring to. These guys hit the ball solid like 10 yards further, 15 yards further now, right? So they're probably not going to have issues with those par fives. Thursday, I would say probably Friday and Sunday, they're going to be okay. Saturday's the day where it's going to be like 54 degrees. They might have issues there. So I would contend the distance game a little bit different now. The weather maybe not nearly as cold as it was that year, but it's an interesting thing to, I guess, consider. I have to check it out. I'll have to see what he said. Bryson says, setting a max ownership percentage on your lineups. I'm not this week. I'm taking a lot of pivots, particularly in that 8K range, the lower end of the 9K. So I don't have to worry about it all that much. But yeah, I always go through and check my lineups. If there's, if I'm sorting by ownership percentage and I see a lineup that's like 120%, I'll probably go in and tweak it, by hand, something like that. So it's not something I'm setting in terms of my opto, but I don't imagine it's going to be an issue. Dave says, did Seamus really have back-to-back hole-in-ones? He did. I don't think it'll impact ownership. Maybe a couple more people play them, but it's not going to be anything tangible. Mark says, which one of the old timers, if any, do you see making the cut? I think if any, I don't really see any of them making the cut, but if any of them are going to, I think it's Bernhard Langer. He's like the, champion over there, right? Back-to-back, I don't know, Champions Tour, like FedEx Cup champion. I don't know what their, awards called and whatnot, but yeah, probably Bernhard Langer. What are your thoughts? What's your favorite GPP play below 7K? I guess the cop-out answer would be Taylor Gooch. If you're talking about a true pivot down here, maybe it's Ryan Fox, but yeah, it's Taylor Gooch. Like most things considered, I think he's mispriced this week, and he's not getting that much ownership. Yeah, Zach and Willett in 2016. Yeah, Willett in 2016, interesting. I didn't look at that board, but yeah, that's more recent, right? So you couldn't really chalk that one up to the golf ball, but yeah, the Zach one, I think we probably could. Abrasive says, do you see power back-to-back hole-in-ones? I did see it, actually. I was throat's giving me some issues here. Give me a second, boys. Talking for 40 minutes straight, I'll do it to you sometimes. Did I see the back-to-back hole-in-ones? I did. I had it on a little side monitor over there to the right. It was pretty cool. Any Bryson love this week? I can't do it myself. But yeah, if you're looking for leverage, he's your guy. He's obviously just going to be he's going to be what, 2% owned? Let me double check. I'll give you an exact number. 1.6% owned. Essentially unowned when it comes to GPPs. But I have to tell you, his outright number was like 165 to 1 to win this golf tournament, which is down there with guys like Bubba Watson when it comes to your outright odds. So it was not so favorable for good old Bryson boy over there. And I'm one of his biggest fans. So, if anyone's going to feel bad about that, it's me. Let's go ahead and talk through a few props. If you have DFS questions, you can still ask them down in chat, but we're mostly going to focus on the prop side now, where I'll go ahead throw the two props we went over during the video earlier up here in stream. But both boards have overs and unders that you can take. This is one of the more researched golf tournaments. There's a lot of data that you can bring up about the Masters. And obviously, the teams, both are underdog and for prize picks, have spent a lot of time on the Masters, right? They know there's going to be a lot of action. As a result, I think the boards, especially for day one, look pretty accurate. But as per usual, because there's so many players on the board, there are spots that you can attack. So, for example, I think the top-end guys should be at 4.5 birdies, but Xander and Morikawa are not top-end players, right? They're not the elite of the elite when it comes to your PGA Tour players. So I like their unders. Just to give you a little bit of a baseline average, the average in 2022 was about 3.3 birdies per round. So if, it gives you an idea, I would say like these, maybe second tier players is what we'd call like a Xander or a Morikawa, probably project right around like the 4 birdie mark. So that's why I'm taking their unders over there. You can see guys like Cam Smith were at 4, Jordan's at 4, Cantlay's at 4 birdies. Like that makes sense to me. Right? Like even at 4, I would probably be leaning on unders because the field average was 3.3. And it's worth noting that average I calculated was only the guys that made the cut. I took all the guys that missed the cut, threw them out as outliers, and tracked them over the weekend. And that's the numbers that we were getting. So The reason why I did that is pretty obvious, by the way. All the guys that are on the board are guys that we'd expect to make the cut, right? They're the best players in the field. Like, I mean, I guess with the exception of some of the old dudes that they're posting on there is more of like a gag prop. That's why I was looking at that way, because like for a majority of the props, I'd say like 90-95% of them on each site. Those are the metrics that we want to be looking at. In terms of prize picks, let's put a few on here too. You can take the overs on strokes. So also, actually, they bumped them. That's not a surprise. They had Xander and Morikawa at 71 strokes. Now they're at 71.5. So that's a no-go. Let's see. Are they over here on underdog still? I believe they are. They haven't been bumping things as much. Yeah, you can see. So yeah, so I suppose if you wanted to take those strokes props, you can take them over there in underdog. But personally, I like these birdie or better props more. The unders at 4.5. So yeah, let's stick to those two. Let's give you a few others over here. I love the over on Tiger Woods 10.5 greens of regulation. He's a very conservative player around Augusta. He knows that if he's going to keep himself in it, he's just going to have to hit greens, make boring golf, have a bunch of 2-putts. And the conditions for Thursday are going to be by far the best of the entire week. It's rained a little bit over the last few days. Greens will be a little bit softer than usual. The winds are essentially non-existent, like we were showing before. You can see outside of super early in the day, there's essentially no wind, right? It dies down right around like 10, 11 a.m. To right around 5 to 7 miles an hour, which is nothing for these players. So I do like the over for Tiger at 10.5. On other sports books, he's at 11.5 greens, and he's juiced towards the over. So obviously at 10.5, that's a pretty decent bet. An entire green lower. And let's see, let's find you one more. It's annoying that they bumped those two props. Do they have any at 4.5 birdies? Only Scotty? Yeah, probably not going to bet that one. That's unfortunate. They bumped like every prop that I wanted to take on here and show you guys. But I'll show you guys ones over here on fairways. You could take the Tiger over 4.5 fairways. I don't hate that either. It's not a horrible prop. It's just bump central here on prize picks. Not a surprise, though. It's just what they do. It's always been like this, so I don't even know why I complain about it. Yeah, they had Haddon at 8 fairways. Now he's at 9.5 fairways. A whole fairway and a half bump at this point. Let's see. All right, let's do this. So hit the Gallo over 8.5 fairways. The average fairways hit around this course are 10, right? And I know he's one of the more inaccurate players on tour, but given the low winds, given how soft it is because of some of the rain they have, I think the average fairways might be closer to like 11. So actually, let's take somebody more consistent. Let's just take the Scotty Scheffler after the bump. I took him at 9.5 fairways, so I'm obviously not going to enter this again. Actually, I already have this prop in, the 10.5 for greens and then 9.5 over there for Scotty Scheffler, but I'd still take it at 10. He's a better than average accuracy player off the tee, which I think most people would not expect. Look at it. He's a top 40 player on tour when it comes to hitting fairways. And like I said, I think the average is going to be closer to 11 because of the low winds and the soft fairways. So yeah, those two will stay over there for prize picks. If you're not on the Patreon, you're probably a little bit late to the party, especially after I did the video earlier today. They normally bump those pretty quick after I post those on a YouTube video. But let's take a look at a few other of the categories just to give you guys maybe some information to look out for. First up is Amen corner shots. I've actually had a few questions about this I haven't been able to get to yet over there on my Discord, but these props I'm taking a wait and see approach on. I'm not playing anything right now. I want to see how they're playing. Most specifically, I need to see how hole 13 is playing. That's the hole that they added about 35 yards to. It's going to be a layup for almost every player in the field. And obviously, given that that's the par 5 out of these 3 holes, right? The one where you can go out there, perhaps make a birdie, that's going to have a huge impact on how those 3 holes play. So especially because holes 11 and 12 both play over par. You need guys to be making birdie on 13 to hit the under here at 12.5. So that's something that I'm going to wait on, but perhaps keep an eye on that. On the holes played props, I know that, did they take them off? They did. They took a few guys off that were really juiced towards the under, but you could take the under on Phil Mickelson. I'm not against it. He's, even on live, right, which is lower competition, has not played all that well. So you might want to avoid that for good old Phil Mickelson. Let's see what's going on down in chat. Where'd we leave off? Yo, Luke, does Sep make the cut? I think so. I think he has a decent week too. JGA says, I don't know what stats say, but you're taking you're saying Tiger over Phil. That makes sense. The stats are going to back that up too. The stats are going to say that Tiger's going to beat Phil. So I don't think you're going to have anybody talking you off of that. I agree. Thoughts on JT Poston? Doesn't have a good track record at majors. Yeah, I think he's worth a flyer, worth a look at. We'll have to see. I think that you give him a few more starts here, which he'll get over the next few years, given his world ranking. I think with that experience, he'll get pretty good. He'll get a lot better here. So we'll see how he goes. How he goes this time around. Throw is killing me. We're almost to the end here, so a few more minutes. Hosni says, thoughts on Pereira and Seamus Power. I am not huge on Pereira. Seamus Power, I like. And it's not because he made 2 hole-in-ones. It's because in majors last year, he absolutely killed it. Fading Cam Smith terrifies you. You have a feeling you're getting slow played with his non-form bullshit. I do have to say, Blitz, as somebody that watched all the live, tracked it, did tons of bets on it. That's why I was really watching live. He was playing like dog shit. So like the non-form thing, Blitz, is actually true, but he's more than capable of snapping out of that. So yeah, I agree. Maybe he is. JGA says, would you take Rahm over 4 birdies? I mean, I think he probably pushes that a lot, but I don't know if I would take it. I didn't bet it myself. Damon says your favorite prize picks is JT over 4.5 fairways. Eyeing Matsuyama over 12 par 3 strokes. So that's over there in underdog, right? Yeah, over there in prize picks, I don't hate that. I don't hate the Sahith Theegala one either. Like, I think 8.5 fairways for anybody, like even if it was one of those old timers, like I would take the over. I mean, I guess Phil's like the one guy I like might not take the over on, right? But like a JT, where's JT at? Up here, 8.5. Okay, let's just do it. Honestly, if I'm going to tell you guys this, I 100% think that's a great play. Those two, and honestly, I may try and mix and match this here on stream too. Let's go JT, and I guess Tiger. I really like that Tiger green regulation prop. Let's do that, and then let's put Sahith with good old Mr. Woods. Yeah. Oh, I can't. I guess I have too many Tiger props in, so I can't do that. Okay, we'll leave it there. Don't have to overextend ourselves, I guess. I already have too much Tiger exposure, I suppose, for prize picks liking. But yeah, I agree with you there. So much so that I just entered it on stream. You love Patrick Reed this week. I think he could contend, but I don't know if I have the highest expectations for him. Heard a lot of talk about Gooch on YouTube. He'll get steamed by the guys that are really paying attention to content, that are doing their due diligence. But if you're playing at a large field GPP, that's a minority of the field. So, yeah, maybe like a percent, maybe a 2% little bump that he might get, especially in like higher dollar contests, but maybe not in like the large field GPPs. 109 people in chat. Smash the like button. Thank you, Doc. I appreciate you. Yeah, guys, I'm not one to beg for the like button, but go ahead, smash that like button if you're in here. What are you waiting for? Brandon says, Gordon Sargent, 75.5 strokes on prize picks. Yeah, the under on strokes intrigues me. I haven't taken it myself, Brandon, but I've been eyeing it up because everything I'm hearing about the kid is that he's a stud, right? Like shooting 3 over par. Like I think that he's more than capable of doing that. So you're saying 2.5 birdies. Probably not 2.5 birdies. I think he was at 2 birdies at one point. Maybe I'm mistaken there. The strokes prop seems a lot better. Kitty or Mitchell? Kitty for me, but I think both of them may struggle this year. They don't have a ton of experience. If you're looking at experience, though, Mitchell does at least have one start here. My thoughts on Na, I do love Na this week. Thoughts on Oosthuizen? He's injured. I would avoid him. You just liked. There you go. But who's your pick to win? You're on Mr. Day and Spieth. So, yeah, I'll go over my outrights. I have an outright on Senior Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Tiger Woods, Jason Day, Sungjae Im, and Brooks Koepka. So those 7 players I have outrights on. And yeah, it's a little bit of a top-heavy card. And some people may say like, oh, you overextended yourself. Well, yeah, it's the Masters. So I overextended myself because it's the biggest week of the year. So be it. It's my money, right? Don't tell me how to spend it. Thoughts on Tom Kim? I think that he's going to be super low owned. If you're looking for leverage, he very well might be your guy. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got for this stream. My voice is on its dying embers here. We obviously had a lot of content to do. I did collaboration content with a bunch of people, and I guess we hit our voice box is telling us it's time to take a break. So we'll end it on that. We made it through our hour anyway, so it's good on the timing. I appreciate everyone who stopped by, all the support here on the channel. Go ahead, smash that like button on the way out if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel as well. We'll be doing live streams for rounds 2 through 4 on here, going through Showdown, as well as the props for rounds 2 through 4. So you'll want to keep an eye on that, especially if you're playing for the single round slates and all the tournaments throughout the rest of the year as well. So looking forward to it. Best of luck. It should be an absolutely epic week. And go Jordan Spieth. Hopefully he can go out there and bring home a second green jacket.